I have a little knitting tradition of sorts where every year on Thanksgiving I cast on my Christmas sweater for the year. So the hand knit sweater that I end up wearing on Christmas Day. Today's December 1st. I've already cast on my sweater. I've already made a little bit of progress, but I thought I'd share the process with y'all. The pattern that I'm knitting is Alfmæli by Védís Jónsdóttir. It is one of the Lopi sweater patterns. I believe this is the 20th anniversary pattern that they did. And the yarn I'm using is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Worsted. This is probably my favorite yarn of all time. If you told me that I could only knit with one wool yarn for the rest of my life, I'd probably choose this. I have Cobblestone Heather, Noble Heather, and Black. So the Cobblestone Heather is my main color that a majority of the sweater will be knit out of. I've already started. I have the bottom of my sleeve. I have the colorwork right here, and I have started with my increases. Because this is a bottom-up sweater, you are starting with your sleeve cuffs and then working up, knitting both of your sleeves before casting on the bottom of your body and then knitting that up. And then you join that all together to knit the yoke, and you end with the collar, very similar to my Halloween sweater that I knit. So this is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, about 3.5 days worth of progress. I didn't really do any knitting on this yesterday. I spent most of yesterday asleep. I wasn't feeling good and I slept for about 17 hours. It is what it is. So I'm going to get back to knitting on this sweater, and I'm going to turn the big light off in my room because it hurts my eyes, and take this sweater off because I am overheating. This is a Lakes pullover by Ozetta, by the way, but I'm going to get to knitting now. I have not recorded an update for this project in a little bit, and the reason is that I have another concussion. I passed out and I hit my head on the floor and I concussed myself. So my head has been hurting really bad. I have constant nausea and my brain just really isn't working properly. Um, The frustrating thing about that is not that I just have a concussion, it's that I have had a concussion every year since 2018, and some years I've even had multiple concussions, and I nearly lasted the entirety of 2024 without getting any concussions, only to get a concussion at the beginning of December. So it sucks. I was reading Little Women while working on this project. Now I am, instead of reading it off of my Kindle, listening to it on audiobook, because I don't want to just leave a book that I'm in the middle of, because when you have a concussion, you're not really supposed to read. The eye movement back and forth exacerbates symptoms and delays healing. I will say, it's a good thing that I have my knitting. It's actually the reason why I got into knitting was because of my concussions. When you have a concussion, you're not really supposed to spend much time looking at screens. You're not supposed to read. You're supposed to, not be surrounded by bright lights. So I learned how to knit, and if you have a pattern memorized, you don't have to look at any screens, you don't have to read, you can just knit in low lighting, and it is something to do. So while I first learned how to knit when I was about 10 years old, I really picked it up in 2022, I think. No, it was 2021. I really picked it up in 2021 because I had had multiple concussions and I needed something to do because I couldn't do a lot of things. So it sucks to have another concussion, especially so close to Christmas when you have all of the lights. I mean, I also have epilepsy that is photosensitive, so like Christmas lights are already difficult for me, but now it's just like plain lights are hard on my eyes, not just the blinking lights, but like Christmas lights in general right now are difficult to look at. So it sucks, but I have my knitting, and that is something which it's kind of been my motto over the past several years. Like, that sucks, but at least I can knit. That sucks, but at least I can crochet. So I'm still working on my Christmas sweater. I have the first sleeve finished, and I am working on my second sleeve and listening to Little Women on audiobook. since I last gave a verbal update on my Christmas sweater. I recently got my hair cut, so now I feel like I look a little bit like Zorg from The Fifth Element. We don't need to talk about it, but I have started working on my body. Both of my sleeves are finished. Working on body. I have about a week and a half left to finish my sweater. I did shorten the length on the sleeves just a little bit because I can't walk properly, so I either use forearm crutches or a wheelchair, and I've been learning that when trying to use forearm crutches or wheelchair, it is not easy when your hands are being covered by sleeves. So I've shortened my sleeves a little bit, and I'm hoping that they reach about wrist length, but I'm making progress. I'm reading Little Women and knitting on my sweater. Yeah. Like I said, I have about a week and a half left to finish this thing. I have been knitting on it regularly. I knit on this last night after my little sister's orchestra concert. We went to Denny's. The last clip, or what should be the last clip, depending on how I edited this, of me knitting inside of a restaurant, and you can kind of see it but probably not. I'm wearing a squid hat that I crocheted because my little sister demands that I wear my squid hat to her orchestra concerts. What am I even talking about? Sweater. This is same pattern. I'm knitting on this portion right now. This portion right now. Once I finish with this portion, I can knit this portion, and then I'll have a sweater. I don't even know, man. I have officially finished the body of my Christmas sweater. Now that I have the body and the sleeves finished, it's time to do the fun part, which is join it for the yoke. This took a little bit longer than I expected because I dislocated my thumb in my sleep this past weekend because I wasn't wearing my splint like I'm supposed to, and I'm not allowed to knit within 24 hours of dislocating my thumb, so I had a day where I wasn't allowed to knit at all. So I was just sitting there with a thumb that hurts, and I wasn't allowed to knit. But I was able to knit afterwards, so I finished the body of my sweater, and it's time to work on the fun part. I'm getting really close to having the sweater finished. Like, the yoke is just a really fun home stretch. It's my favorite thing about knitting bottom up circular yoke colorwork sweaters is that the best part of the sweater is the last step. So it's just like, oh yeah, I need to get the body and the sleeves finished, and then, woo, the yoke just, it appears, it knits itself. It's a very fast thing. It's not fast. It takes time. But you forget about time when you're working on it. And then you accidentally spend 2 hours straight knitting. And then your occupational therapist gets mad at you because you didn't take any breaks. I'm going to stop talking and start knitting. I'm not good at talking. I am good at knitting. So just finished the colorwork of my sweater, and I did make a slight modification to this pattern. This pattern doesn't have short rows written in, and I really like having short rows around the back of the neck of my sweaters, especially because I have kyphosis. So if I don't have short rows, the back of my sweater will really lift up. So I added in short rows. With this pattern, it was a little, I wouldn't say tricky, but I did have to think about it a bit, because typically you would add in short rows directly after, or in this case, before the neck ribbing, but there's colorwork there, and I don't want to work short rows, decreases, and colorwork at the same time, so I added it into one of the last plain rounds of knitting before the last colorwork bit. So I'm hoping that really works out and helps with the fit. Alright, it is December 27th. I wore my Christmas sweater on Christmas Day. I also wore it yesterday because I had an appointment, and I'm wearing it now. I really like it. The sleeves came out the perfect length so they don't get in my way whenever I need my hands. Something kind of funny, my original version of this sweater, in low lighting, the red that I used for the contrast and the black I used for the other contrast, they don't have a lot of contrast, so in low lighting this band of colorwork kind of blends into itself. So this green and the black have more contrast, but the green and the gray don't have a lot of contrast. Whatever. The short rows turned out really well. No one even knew the short rows were there until I told them. So yeah, I really like this sweater. I think it's going to go into my regular sweater rotation. It's always super gratifying whenever a bottom up circular yoke colorwork sweater turns out well, because it's something that you really have to trust the process on. When you knit the sleeves, it's very difficult to tell where exactly they're going to lay, so it's very difficult to get like a precise length on your sleeves. Same goes for the body, and if you have like a gauge mishap in the yoke, you can't just like try on the yoke before you split for the body to see if it looks fine or anything. Like, you have to do a lot of work before you're able to try it on. You have to be pretty much done with it, so it can be a little nerve-wracking at times. With top-down sweaters, I like to try them on a lot. You can't really do this with a sweater like that, so it's all the more satisfying when I knit a bottom-up sweater that I can't really try on, and I finish it, I block it, and I put it on for the first time, and it looks great.